You are a descendant of an ancient dynasty, and the wealth of that dynasty, of which has been conserved and preserved in something like an ancient trust or vault or something of that nature, is about to be transferred in the physical form to you as its living rightful heir. Now, the way that I was seeing this was certainly, as you can see, quite material, quite physical, quite actual. But the origin of it, the preservation of it all, is definitely of a spiritual nature. And of course, with such a proclamation of fate and fortune, there are some energies that aren't too happy about it. And a great contribution to the delay of this transfer has been exactly that: opposition, intrusion, interference, interruption. Because what I was also seeing is that this is a transfer that's been underway, almost like scanning for its rightful heir. Like, imagine a trust that's just been sitting dormant. Well, actually not dormant, it was collecting interest. That's another part of it. But it was just awaiting an object of a proper channel, I should say, of transfer for ages. I mean, ages, lifetimes. And age after age, there was an ideal beneficiary. However, with each age also came that contrary energy that would push back, or, like I said, interrupt, interfere with that transfer, even by rerouting it to some other destination, or just altogether making it inaccessible to whom it was supposed to connect with. And one way I saw that happening was because this wasn't a transfer that was assigned or designated just sheerly by bloodline alone, or by descendant. If you have a last name, or you're from the same lineage or bloodline, whatever, it's not that cut and dry, because there have been many that have come as descendants of this great dynasty, but haven't been able to pass what looked to me to be some type of series of authentication checkpoints, like some type of verification of identity, and also like these checkpoints of authentication that needed to be completed and affirmed in order for the transfer to successfully take place. And that's where the obstinate energy came in, because through that process there was always some interruption, where all the steps, let's say there were 3, weren't able to be completed, and therefore that made that transfer null and void for that age or that lifetime. And then you'd have to there had to be an awaiting for another heir to be born, identified, chosen, tested, tried, to start the process all over again. And then another interruption, another interference, or another, in many cases, energies that position themselves to be the rightful heir, and were able to route, or what do you say, like channel that energy or that money or whatever this fortune is to themselves, which also caused an interruption, because it's something, this is deeper than probably what I'm going to have words to say, but I'm going to try, because there's something about this transfer, that in order for it to be completely released, it's like, how can I say this, Spirit? Not only does the recipient have to be authenticated, it's like some type of fail-safe built into the mechanism of transfer, so to speak. Let's say the institution, as it, if you may, that although some have been able to perhaps hack the system and put themselves in place as an heir, or claim some type of what do you call it, make some type of claim, false claim, or project some type of false identity to attract the fortune to themselves. There's something built into it, and here's where the spiritual nature of it all comes into play, where it knows, I just got it. This is very spiritual. It knows, it's like a system breach, where it knows when the rightful heir, even if it's been able to trick the system for a second, is receiving the abundance, because it's something about being able to gauge how that abundance or fortune is being magnified or invested or multiplied, like how it's being managed, just blanketly. It's something about being able to, the system being able to track how that's being managed, that somehow signals whether or not it's, first of all, been a breach, or whether or not there needs to be a cutoff or a stop, or some type of seizure, or like freezing the assets, so to speak, because it's whatever it is, it has a, just as I said, the recipient has to be authenticated. It's also attached to some type of assigned frequency, and it may not be so specific and particular, as in it can only be used for X, Y, and Z, but it's something about the frequency of the transfer and how it's being managed, and invested, spent, harvested, whatever, like however it's being used. It can tell what it can read the vibration of that management, and it's like that's the security measure that like it has built into it, where it's like either this person is not authentically the beneficiary or a true heir or inheritor of this estate, or something's going on with that identified beneficiary, of which also needs to be like seized immediately, or ceased immediately, like ceased and desisted in some type of way, to protect the I guess something about like the integrity of the fortune itself from being expended to depletion in a way that it was not divinely designed to be so. So I know that probably, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I'm gonna tell you that the Ace of Swords was the first card out, and then everything else. And these three literally together, and then this was at the bottom of the deck. So I was just shuffling these cards really to put them away, because I had already intended to use Intuitive Kev's deck today. But when those energies came out, I received it as the preview and the pre-shuffle, from the pre-shuffle, and I decided to leave them out, not only as receipt, but also to help me channel what I feel is one of those messages that is kind of like, if you know, you know. And also some aspects of it I almost feel aren't even for everyone's ears, so it's only but so deep I may even be able to go. It might just be a very symbolic and surface, but for the most part, if you resonate with this message, really and truly, you're in alignment as the beneficiary and the next of kin of an ancient dynasty that's been looking to disperse an exponential inheritance to its living descendants, so that the legacy, the spirit of this legacy and dynasty can be carried on, of which clearly is quite divine, with the Wheel of Fortune and the Ace of Swords to start, for it to advance some agenda that is above the pay grade of those that have wished to put a halt to it. And with the best, I mean, the Nine of Wands is a lot of energy exerted with the best and the best what do you call it, attempts. I mean, like I said, age after age, lifetime after lifetime, maybe eon after eon, as far as I know. I don't know. But this is ancient. This has been a long time underway, where the natural order of something was intended to be disturbed. Now, we know that the divine does all things in its time. So there seems to have been some unjustifiable disturbances and interferences. However, like I said, it all helped to contribute to the conservation of this wealth to be released in just the right time, and on just the right timeline and dimension, and to just the right descendant. So although it may have appeared to be unjust in seasons and lifetimes and so on and so forth past, it ultimately was a justifiable delay, because with all the well intention of even the beneficiaries themselves and the ascendants themselves to have this transfer be completed, what mattered most is the timing in which that it was, and the readiness. I just heard Ready Player One. The readiness of the recipient to be able to pass all those verifications, whatever they were. First of all, to be identified, because that was the other strategy of opposition, was to cloak the identified descendant in projections that almost made them unrecognizable to some degree. And then, of course, the other part is to almost compel like a forged agreement between that descendant, so that they would behave or be distracted in a way that made them unrecognizable or unidentifiable. In some ways took that chosen descendant way off trail and off track before they could even begin the verification process. And then, of course, there were the times when it was started, but you got to have all the components, all three steps per se, for it to be deemed complete. That hasn't been able to happen for multiple reasons, all the reasons that I've said, and probably way more than I could ever put my finger on. Until now. That's the good news. Until now. This Eight of Wands is like all of the energy that's been conserved from way back when, now finally being targeted to one descendant, or at least a representative of, a dynasty that gets to, because the Ten of Pentacles is here, that is entrusted to manage it in a way that now it can be dispersed, conserved, expanded, advanced for generations, maybe even as a redemption of the past and the time that was so-called lost and opportunities missed, and also forwarded for the preservation of the dynasty to live on in that same frequency of fate and fortune and wealth overall, in every way, shape, and form, not just materially, that it was obviously destined to do. Because considering that there continues to be a descendant born speaks to the strength and power of the dynasty itself. You know, when we're talking about ages and ancient, of which at this point should be forgotten, you know, or just a matter of a historical account or a legend of sorts. But it's like the stuff that legends are made of that we do almost like, you know, disregard as a good story, maybe even a fairy tale, is about to be brought to life and actualized in human sense and sensibility in a way that validates the spiritual that validates the wonders of the spirit. Okay? That's what I hear. All right, so I'm gonna leave that there for now. I'm gonna get into these cards and see if anything helps me out a bit more. But what's up? I'm Danae. I'm here with a message for you on this Friday, June 5th, 2026. It is 3:17 on the clock. As I said, this was the preview from the pre-shuffle. And now we're going to use Intuitive Kev's iKev Tarot deck and see what else comes up. I really do urge you to take what resonates and leave what doesn't, or to just be entertained, if you will, because this may not be for everybody. It just may not. All right, so Three of Pentacles, but that's way too big. It's a whole stack of cards, and I wasn't ready. I'm just trying to shuffle them a bit. Ten of Wands, the end of struggle. All right. Nine of Swords. Yeah, it's some aggressive energy and on the sidelines, karmic connection. But that's of no consequence or concern to whomever resonates with this high vibration here, because here's the thing: the opposition didn't know that they were contributing to the conservation as well, and that is a hard pill to swallow, because what they thought they were doing, because it's probably more of a spiritual nature and like an entity expressing itself in human form at this point than it is actually physical. Well, it's become that, but the origin of it, the core of it, is something far, like I said, above all of our pay grades, for real. But what they were perhaps misguided to believe is that they had a viable case to make for the to receive the transfer themselves. I mean, the 8, the next in line is the 9, right? But just the entitlement alone is what spiritually disqualified a lot of that energy, because unlike the rightful heir, they weren't willing to even begin the steps in the verification process to show and prove themselves worthy and authenticated. They found other ways around it, or again, like I said, kind of cloaked the energy of the validated one cloaked it on themselves, or cloaked the energy of the validated one, because the ultimate goal was to reroute that frequency for someone else to be able to absorb without having to do the work, and or most desperately to at least keep someone from ever being qualified and verified to receive it themselves. And the one that is chosen to actually receive it and has gone through all the steps of verification is pretty much seals the deal of for like it makes the transfer almost automatic to a certain degree, like when you do your verification steps electronically, it automatically gives you access to whatever it is you're looking to open. Sometimes even your own account will take you through, steps like that. But it automatically gives you access the moment that you complete that to the the satisfaction of the system itself. So that's where the intention of delay came in, because the obstinate energy knew that it was fraudulent and couldn't be verified for whatever reason, probably just energetic signature. It wasn't willing to go through the process to be verified or to gain its access. And if it couldn't have, because there was a point in time, I believe, where that fraudulent flow was frozen. And once you're locked out, you can't get back in unless, of course, you're going to go through the steps, and somebody wasn't able to do that. But once the entry is granted for the one that is authenticated, it completely cuts off that flow and makes it completely inaccessible for anything outside of who it is assigned to. And that's been the biggest fear of obstinate energies, because as long as they could keep it delayed, maybe pinch off of it here and there, get a few crumbs or whatever, and in the same vein, distract the delay the authentication process from being completed, there was always hope in the next lifetime and the one after that and the one after that to gain full access. That was the false hope ultimately, because like I said, there's something that's built into this where even if somehow obstinate energy would have found a way to hack the system to authenticate itself fraudulently, what would have been dispersed or released would have ultimately hit a security breach when it realized in its own, I don't know what this is, but there's some realization built into the system that this energy, this money, this wealth is not being managed properly. It's not being managed well. And we know that must be the case when the intentions are to be fraudulent in the first place. If you have poor intentions to get the fortune, you're certainly not going to turn around and do anything righteous with it. And so that is kind of like the security measure that's built in. So even when there was a hack or of some sort, and there was something that was able to be transferred or siphoned or whatever fraudulently, it ultimately froze itself when the energy was being expended for low vibrational purposes, or was in the hands of low vibrational energies, and most likely being mismanaged in that regard. So it can completely to compound on the disdain, particularly toward the one that was rightfully the heir or beneficiary of it, just surely on account of the fact that they know that they could never be. And so with each attempt, again, age after age, lifetime after lifetime, year after year, season after season, whatever we're talking about here, there became a more aggressive intent, maybe a more clever, a more calculated attempt, more sophisticated attempt not just to find new ways to breach the system, to hack the system, but also to find new ways to distract the true heir. All of that going on at the same time. But like I said, unbeknownst to them, it was still contributing to the divine ordinance of it all, because with each sophistication projected against each heir that was identified and tried by fire and so on, literally by fire, it strengthened the it like enriched the stock of from which that heir would then produce a new one. So it was like, although it seemed to be weakening the chances of this ever occurring, it was actually progressing the advancement of the dynasty itself with each new age. Now, of course, there probably were times when there were some backsteps and so on and so forth, but you ultimately learn from your failures as well. So even in seasons or lifetimes when it seemed to be all hope lost, or everything had fallen and failed, it actually just contributed to more enlightenment to some degree. Because even if it took another generation or another lifetime or another season or whatever for a new heir to be identified, what they were being transferred, what they were being what can I say, I guess what was being passed down to them to some degree was all of the information of those that may have tried and failed. Here it is, this is the redemption of the past, that had tried and failed or gotten really close, but somehow still no cigar in the past. All of that information, especially with the authenticated heir, is going to be transmitted all at once. It's like it finally has something to channel through, a place to go, a safe space to reside, to even progress and advance, to multiply. The interest of it all, that's where the interest comes from. Because as I said, it's like lifetimes of this energy, information, maybe gifts, talents, money, enlightenment, wins and failures, like someone now knowing the system so inside and out on account of those that have gone before them, that it completely exalts them head and shoulders above the rest, particularly against one that is false altogether, that never even had a prayer, really. Because even if they would have gotten their hands on all the security codes to get in that vault, the moment they started expending it on squandering it, most likely on things that are not, like how sometimes in a trust there are certain stipulations, for even when and how and who it gets to be released to. Even if that person is named in the trust, sometimes there are things that they have to do before they can take ownership of it. It's something along those lines, where this person never had a prayer to be able to complete those that criteria. They never could measure up to that. So they had to find ways to, like I said, hack the system or trick the system in their favor. But even still, what they didn't realize, first of all, is that they were contributing in a part of the preservation. And also what they weren't aware of is just how grand they at a time may have thought that they were really getting, they were getting the best of this fortune. But they didn't realize that, like I said earlier, what they were able to siphon of it, dare I even say steal of it, was only a menial fraction of what actually was in store. Like what was in the vault, they have no way of knowing just how grand of a fortune it actually is. They could speculate, and contemplate on it, and maybe even through their wildest imaginations perceive the magnitude of the fortune, but it supersedes even that much. So therefore, their calculations were always off on how to usurp it, because they really didn't have the knowledge, like reliable intel, or insider information, so to speak, the way that they may have been misguided to believe that they did, which may have given them the confidence to believe that they had the capacity and the power, and the resource to be able to transfer it all to themselves. I don't know. Okay, I'm moving on now. All right. All right. Let's see. 9 of Pentacles and the Ace of Swords. Well, I mean, should I stop there? Shit. I don't even know. That's so confirming to me for all that I just tried to say, because I don't even know if I'm saying it right. I'm just saying it how I feel it and how I sense it. But the 9 of Pentacles is exactly that independent state that I'm speaking of, that is the attractive force, as a matter of fact, of that magician energy, that air energy, where you have to find yourself spiritually independent and sovereign in a particular way that's satisfying to the benefactors, let's say, of this trust. The I don't know what you would even call it, like the not the executors, because now that would be you, whomever can relate to this. You become the executor, but like the officers of the trust or something. Like, I don't know what you call that, but they're the ones that are governing the process, that are making sure the criteria is met, the verification, the authentication is completed or whatever. And this is like that preliminary state here with the 9 of Pentacles, when the 9 of Pentacles, even in a traditional form, is not just a projection of wealth in the material form. It speaks to what someone has already done in the spirit first. The Pentacles are just the manifestation of how someone has already curated themselves spiritually, or the work that they've already done spiritually to be attractive for a 9 of Pentacles. That, pretty much having done a certain level of work on yourself that now makes you a prosperous being that is highly attractive, that is entrusted with massive wealth entirely on their own, that knows how to manage and multiply, like knows how to look ahead toward the future, that has the insight, the foresight, and, the intuitive nature, even to some degree, to make wise choices with that fortune, with no particular influence outside of self at all, but definitely particular to it being wise counsel. You know what I mean? Like somebody that knows how to go acquire the proper protection and the proper put the proper officers in place to help them manage the wealth if need be. You know, that would be the wise thing to do. An accountant or this or that, like all of their affairs are in order, whether you have a little or have a lot. And for most, that was really the test, not how well you can manage a massive fortune in the physical form, but how well do you manage your spiritual fortune, of which most didn't even have full access to. Just the, like, not unlike the opposition, just a little bit of access you've had to your spiritual power and authority is what maybe is part of that authentication process, where you showed and prove how trustworthy and honorable and honest you can be with what may have even seemed to you to be a massive fortune by your perspective. To be entrusted to make pivotal choices in the clutch, to be entrusted to protect yourself at all costs, identifying yourself first, your truth, your integrity. Here it is, another step, as the fortune, you know, the commodity of you. How did you manage that before now being entrusted? All of that is quite spiritual and energetic. And then here comes the flow of wealth in the material form. That's someone that's done all that already. So let me get a couple more, because I know I'm gonna get a few more. I'm not gonna go too hard on this. Is that one? Yeah. Bruh. I would just go ahead out on a limb here and say that start getting your ducks in a row right now, if you haven't already. Start at least energetically calling in the proper support systems in your life by way of some of those positions that I'm speaking of: accountants, financial advisors. Certainly, if this past month or year or whatever, even farther back than that, you haven't been kind of cleaning house and relieving your auric field of clutter by way of people, places, and things that you may not be able to trust so freely, with the little that you had, let alone on a scale such as this, now would be a fine time to begin. That's part of this preliminary stage here, that readiness. But most have already been doing that and already done that. But the next step now, advancing with this Queen of Pentacles, who's taken possession of wealth and now in a position to multiply it, to be fertile with it, to disperse it, to nurture it, all those things. It's time for you to make sure that you have the proper support systems in place, considering how you want to set up a trust, not just for present tense or accounts, not just in the present tense, but for future, and not just future like, oh, my kids. I'm talking about putting things into play for their kids and their kids' kids and their kids' kids' kids, and so on and so forth, till you can't even fathom, again, because somebody did it for you in the spirit, if nothing less. This was conserved. This is generational wealth that was conserved with you in mind, and you hoped for eons ago. And so the least you can do is pick up that torch and carry it, not only with grace, but with I don't know, I guess with divine intention. I'm literally scratching my head, like, but yeah, I'm talking huge inflow, maybe windfall of wealth here that you will most likely, I'm just going to say outright, not be able to manage wisely all by yourself. And it wouldn't be expected for you to, unless you come from some type of financial background or training, or, and even still, in the case such as this, it would always help to have someone that you can trust be in your counsel. So I'm just going to say that there, okay? So let's see what else is here. I mean, even if it comes down to like choosing, really considering like the best institution for your money. It might not be the credit union that you're a member of now. It might not be Chase. It might not be TD, you know, like there's time, there is a call to diversify your portfolio in more ways than one, not just by way of your assets and investments, but also in the counsel that you keep, and certainly by way of your conservation of this wealth. This isn't the type of wealth that you just put in one bank account and call it a day. This is the type of wealth that trusts are built on, that you don't plan to touch ever. This is the type of wealth that you have in multiple institutions. This is the type of wealth that you have working for you in some type of invested way. This is the type of wealth that you can use to invest in others that will ultimately contribute to your portfolio. This is the type of wealth that you use to build your own businesses and visions out, or to expand your visions, where you don't need no loan. You don't need investors per se. You are the angel investor for others. This is the type of wealth where you will be able to afford to buy your house in cash, where you will afford to buy your car in cash, where you don't live in debt. There be no reason to. And I know, generally speaking, especially in this country, rich people notoriously carry debt, but wealthy people don't, especially not divinely wealthy. You don't need, there's no need to have a debt for anything that you can't afford to pay outright. And it's also speaking to living within your means, not just by the dollar sign of your net worth, but living reasonably. That's another part of the authentication, like someone that can be entrusted with not just living lavish for lavish sake and squandering wealth irresponsibly just because you can. This is about having like a conservative, not cheap, and not by no means not what's the right word, scarce, but wise, reasonable, responsible, practical, even in the ways that make sense when you're in a tax bracket such as this, of course, because practicality for one may be different for the other. So it's not a matter of not being able to enjoy your wealth, but it's something about like just being reasonable and practical about even the ways in which you have the liberty to go crazy, but you still just live within a certain mean of practicality, of responsibility, and being future minded. Five of Cups. That just kind of popped out. That don't even make no sense. Let's see what else on the Five of Cups. Yeah, that almost popped back, but I took it anyway. Because I just feel like it's out of place. So it's probably not even your energy, most likely. And if anything, it's like I was saying before, like retribution for the tears, for the pain, the sorrows of the past, where many would have, maybe many did nobly um uh nobly, what's the word I'm looking for, attempt it'd be the simplest word sometimes, attempt to fulfill this, this great feat themselves, but they weren't able to. And some, maybe it was just surely because it wasn't time yet. Wheel of Fortune is here, which gives so much emphasis on time. And with the Ace of Swords coming first, is something precise about this, where everything, every part has to be in alignment. Not, well, he got the first two verifications right, so we'll let him slide on the third, or oh well, we weren't really quite ready for this to go down in this season, but why the hell not? Like, no, it's something that was very precise to the T, to the mark. And even when, like I said, energies thought they were delaying the process, they really weren't. And so here's the vindication for all of those years and tears that seem to have been lost, literally by loss. Because look, there's two more in the background, bringing balance back to the bloodline. Ooh, and that looks like, look at that. It's like red. Bringing balance and harmony, vindication to the bloodline. This is something, man. Page of Pentacles. And that's literally like a child. Yeah, it's like a rebirth, and like a fresh infusion of prosperity. Like I was saying before, that's not just for you, that's not even just for them, meaning of the past, but it's about empowering the future to carry the torch. And of course, as it is with most good parents or elders, in a way that is much more easeful than it has been in the past. Like shaving that learning curve, lowering the degree of difficulty, making it so that your struggles aren't your children's struggles, and certainly that it becomes progressively more prosperous as the legacy continues, But here it is, what I'm also getting is that it's something about the fail-safe of this transfer, though, where it's not just about, okay, now they're ready. Maybe that's also a part of the authentication process. It's something about the offspring being considered as well, like seeing forward is ahead. Like maybe this person by themselves, maybe in other lives, a person by themselves was straight, was deemed ready for the transfer, or whatever you call it. Like they were approved, let's say, but they had some shitty kids, you know what I mean? Or, something like that, which could happen. Because if you imagine even in real life, like how you could have a billionaire, a millionaire amass a fortune, and the next generation just, or a great business, a strong business or corporation, and the next generation just completely, mess it up, let it fall apart. Somebody was just talking about that too. It was a reading I was watching, particularly in the Black community, our community, where we are healing and evolving from, in a way, such things as this, where older generations try, this is real time, try to amass a legacy to pass down and to leave behind, usually by way of property, sometimes money, but usually property, and sometimes business, but most significantly property, like a house or land or something. And they work their fingers to the bone. You'd have grandmothers scrubbing floors, or even folks that were were born into slavery or once removed, that somehow by the grace of God were able to acquire a little piece of the American pie, and wanted to pass that on to their, keep that in the family. And in some ways, there's been disenfranchisement, especially of land where it was stolen from them or taken from them, using the law to make it, to do so really illegally, but using the law to steal. But in some ways, it was on account of like just the deterioration of enlightenment. And I don't have time to go deep into that, but the value of what that land stood for may have depreciated with time. And even that was on account of projections and, you know, interferences and interruptions to the origin of that acquisition and the spirit and intention that it was made in. Sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle when you get beat down by a society that systematically doesn't not only want you to acquire, but certainly doesn't want you, particularly in our community, this community, I'm black, doesn't want you to pass down so that you can't continue the wealth or, build upon it. That's a systematic oppositional force in this country and in many other places. But anyway, sometimes we get caught in that cycle, and instead of wealth being transferred and passed down, trauma gets passed down, and it sometimes takes lifetimes for that to cycle out. And again, as I said, for there to be a new identification of someone that actually can carry the torch, and they're bred to do it, and they have the ambition, and they maybe perhaps have the offspring that looks like they'll be, or it's projected that they'll be able to do, you know what I mean? So all of that mattered as well, so that it would be guaranteed, or so that it is guaranteed. It's almost like a new covenant that's being forged, or a regenerated covenant, but in such a way so that it forges almost a guarantee, like I said, a fail-safe and a security in some sense, that it won't just stop with whomever physically receives the transfer, but it will have that eternal energy behind it, that this person, it has the energy and the will and ambition to instill the principles that will make their legacy equipped to manage this transfer and keep it going. And so therefore, those are the jewels that get passed forward and are most precious, even more so than the wealth itself, or the physical material wealth itself. Something about that was also a part of that authentication, because maybe, like I said, in some lifetimes, somebody would have been perfectly capable of managing, and maybe they did. But like I said, here comes that built-in security fail safe, where their kids got a hold of it and within a decade's time squandered it, and there was nothing more of what they had access to, let alone to be in the alignment of the channel for the rest, that exponential amount that I'm speaking of, that abundance to fully be transferred as well. And that could even really show itself, like I said, in actual practical real life ways. Like I said, properties being mishandled, and maybe losing Big Mama's house, or you know, it falling apart in such a way that the city comes and takes it or seizes it or whatever, or somebody can't pay the property taxes, or you know, be again back to the property energy, or it's something being foreclosed on because the next generation couldn't afford to manage it, and you know, whatever. So that's how that can happen in real life time. But this here is what I'm speaking of. Like I said, I'm glad the Page of Pentacles came next because it's the vindication for the past, and this the insurance and assurance that the future is secure. The future is secure. All right, let me get one more. Hopefully it'll only give me one more. It's the Emperor. This is like the kid growing up, and like I said, now he's the executor of the estate, and now his children are next in line, and then their children are already, you know, it's, oh my god, it's a whole new dynasty. Well, not, I won't say it's a new dynasty because it's an ancient dynasty. It's a dynasty that has like strong roots already, but the regeneration of it is what's happening in real time in this season, in this lifetime, that again is solidifying it to be almost reinvigorated to last in the way that it may have thrived before. Whatever happened to, you know, to dismember it or disperse it or disenfranchise it, it's been reclaimed. 3:57 on the clock. It's been reclaimed in a way that now it has the I don't even know what to call it, but like the substance is what I'm hearing, but that's not what I feel. I guess the essence and the substance has been purified in a way and strengthened also in a way that it's here to stay. It's here to stay. For, of course, as long as the divine now says so, you know, whatever that looks like. But I get eternal vibes. I mean, if it's something that's been around maybe since the beginning of time and it's lasted through the test of time, tried through the fire, tried by opposition, tried by time, you know, time itself could take you out. And yet it's still here. Even if it's a remnant of it, that's a powerful bloodline to have lasted through all of that adversity, and still it's here, strong enough to project a promising future. I would say at this point that's something that is eternal. Because if it was going to be eliminated and if it was going to be, you know, like disappeared or banished, I don't know the word I'm trying to find right now, extinct, I guess, not extinct, I guess extinct, something like that, then it would be at this point. But it's something about this bloodline that's strong and powerful enough not only to have stood the test of time, but to have preserved its legacy for such a time as this, when the prophecy on its continuation and its further prosperity can now come into fruition. Because that's what I'm missing here too, is the prophecy that's being fulfilled here with this regenerated covenant. Oh my God, divine guidance. Yeah, it's covered. It's covered. As long And I'm hearing train up a child in the way they should go. It's a Bible verse. And when they're old, they will not depart from it. It's like through each generation, somebody got the memo. Even if they couldn't carry it out and fulfill it to its complete extent, it's like the light was passed down. It was kept vibrant through somebody. Even in the darkest ages, it was still a light that was maintained. Even if it was a flicker, somehow it was maintained. And now it's like that was in a time, perhaps consider, when there wasn't as much enlightenment. A lot of what people were going through the motions of, was in deferment to a power outside of themselves. And, not for nothing, not realizing that they were much of, they were a reflection of the supreme that they were deferring to. That concept wasn't so widely perceived or accepted through much of this, which is probably why it made it easy for it to be delayed and disrupted. But now, with the new age of enlightenment on hand, and there being much more self-awareness and supreme awareness, and that being the wisdom passed down, paid forward, planted and harvested. Oh my God, that's what I'm saying. Like this is locked and loaded. It's eternal, because if a energy such as this, so say, has a child that may be a bit questionable, the influence of that power is bound to at least reach the grandchildren, or a niece, a nephew, or somebody that has the strength to carry it forward, to carry that torch. So it's like now there's too much known, the enlightenment is too widespread and too gracefully embraced, not to perpetuate this dynasty into God knows whenever, however, wherever, whenever. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, if it was already written, but now it's solidified, because where the odds were against and it still was able to be preserved and conserved, the odds are very much in the favor of those that have been tried and tested to this point. All of the support, the resources, the fortune, the favor, the protection is on that side. So it literally makes the opposition, not defenseless, but ineffective in some way, or ineffectual. Yeah. Social media. Okay, that's interesting. But it probably just gives way to, the nuance of the time, like how far, yes, like we've come from the Wheel of Fortune, which is ancient energy. Like I said, we're in an age now where you can't help but be enlightened. The only challenge is just to make sure that you're being enlightened by the right things. The most productive intel out there, and prosperous intel. And if you have the proper guide to to support that just further empowers not just the generation of this era, but it secures the future nuances, that it secures the future in a way that no matter how more what am I trying to say here? It's like, when I was coming up, there was none of this. Literally, when I was a kid, there was none of this. But I was young at the birth and the evolution of these things. So although I came up in a time when there wasn't that, I also know as a millennial life on the other side, for the best and for the worst. And because I'm in that position, unlike some of the next generations to come, I have a bit more wisdom about the pitfalls of a world that is accessible in this way. And you know interconnected in this way. But I also know the great privilege and what's the word I'm looking for? Like the great advantages to being connected and having like certain technologies advance and things that you would never thought of before now being just a part of your everyday life. There's something of value to be offered to not just whomever you're speaking to now, but something about it is like projective of the future, that even in terms of like AI, we have no idea where all of that is about to take us as a collective, on a global scale, and everything lower than that or lesser than that. But there's enough wisdom circulating before any of that existed, and particularly a refined wisdom, not just so much that you would be resistant to evolution in the way that it naturally occurs and maybe in the ways that it's not so natural, but you can add value to that nuance in a way that is protective and also progressive, if that makes sense. So to me, it's like something about solidifying not just where we've come from, maybe from the dark ages to now, and even before that, like I said, like this is ancient, but it's saying that the longevity is here, that no matter what comes of humanity and of creation, what progresses and advances and evolves from creation and humanity itself, this is a dynasty that can adapt, adjust, and ascend no matter the age now. That's what this is. I know that might be strange, but that's what that's what's channeling to me about social media. It's just literally solidifying the eternality of this dynasty to come from something of which we don't even know. They say that some societies were even more advanced, but in a different way than we are. But the technology that we use now would be foreign to them. So it's just something about like no matter what the age and what comes of it, some of which you can say is progressive and some of which you can say is repressive. Who knows? Depending on who you ask. This is a dynasty. This is a legacy. This is even the fortune and favor of it all. It's something that has proven itself to be able to last through the test of time, and it has the projection to adapt to whatever come what may, and to ascend even beyond that. That's like the covenant, so to speak. That's the grounds of the covenant, that it's not just a matter of meeting the age where it is, but it's the value that's brought to it by way of divine guidance to enlighten from your perspective, and with the resources that you have on hand, of which have been very few before, now are plentiful and maybe even unlimited. That's still the commitment to the covenant, to just make sure that you are always this whomever relates to this, the instillment for the generations to come is that no matter what, you are always taking an ascended approach, not to be better than, but to add value and to attract the highest value to the nature of creation at that particular time, that you have the ability to do so. Certainly not to falter, to not to get lost in and conforming to the status quo, and certainly not to falter to the lowest frequency. It's always this this devotion to ascension that is what will keep this dynasty thriving, keep it living literally, but also maintain its exaltation. And if you got anything to do with that, baby, Godspeed and God bless, because that's such a great honor to behold. Yeah. All right. Way over time, but I knew it because I could feel, and I still don't feel like, I never do. But like I said, he that have an ear, let him hear. And if this is for you, then you know it is, and you know what you need to do. And ultimately, that is to just keep being you. Keep being you, keep doing you, because clearly you're doing amazing. All right. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Until next time, as always, I leave you with peace.